day. He's as good as most of them, and this looks like being his day over the rather more unfamiliar terrain. The sunshine could not be more misleading. The wind still gusting, the ground heavier than ever, the conditions really hairy here, and Passey's made light of them. Sam Carey back in 6th place. Sorry, Peter?
I was going to say, there's Sam Carey back in 6th place, and he seemed to have left Mark King some way back. So Sam Carey has actually run this race really very intelligently. He bided his time and came through late, and all he had to do was make sure he's in the first 6. And such is his consistency recently. I think he was certainly one of those ones we hoped would be in the first 6, and he's proving just that. He's a long way back, though. He'll be looking at the back of Paul Taylor, quite a long way ahead of him in 5th place.
Passey knowing that he's almost there now. And the finishing straight virtually in sight now for Adrian Passey.
And while he'd be pleased with that, of course, the finishing straight is right into the teeth of this howling gale, so it's very, very tough. And you end up in virtually a mud bath at the end. And we've seen many runners, in fact, as they finish in the previous races, stumble in the mud at the finish. It really is very mucky indeed, but the finishing tape is now being prepared to welcome Adrian Passey.
Not too many spectators have turned out on this really wintry morning in Glasgow. But I'm sure those that have, as Dean McNeely trudges his way towards the finishing straight. 2nd place, Robeson 3rd, Bristow 4th. The spectators who are here and the lone piper will give a generous round of applause to these tough guys who cope with the most difficult conditions today. Cross-country runners are used to the worst possible weather and the worst possible conditions underfoot, it goes without saying, but few of them would have experienced anything quite as bad as this. Well, they call it the Piper's Lament, but there'll be no lamenting for the leader, Adrian Passey, on his way home. That was Dean McNeely, a clear 2nd as well. So Adrian Passey wins the World Cross Country Trials and guarantees himself a place in our championship team for France in a couple of weeks' time. Dean McNeely takes 2nd place.
And a tremendous sprint for 3rd, which in fact Paul Taylor and Chris Robeson. Paul Taylor just gets it from Chris Robeson, and Andy Bristow content just to jog across the line in 5th place. And a very, very spirited battle for the final spot, which Sam Carey wins by just 2 meters from Mark King. There's Mark King just missing out there in 7th place, but he'll go as a travelling reserve, no doubt, for the World Cross Country team.
So just to repeat, Adrian Passey, Dean McNeely, Paul Taylor, Chris Robeson, Andy Bristow and Sam Carey, the first 6 men home, thereby guaranteed a place in our World Championship team. Remember, the selectors will add 3 names to that list of half a dozen to make up our team.
Still the Rushworth coming in next, I think is in 8th place now. John Mayock, number 18. Spirited finish, though, by the rest of these runners. Number 81, Nigel Adams of Wales, also up there in the top 10 in 10th place.
So, the conditions were awful, but the standard of running, particularly by the winner, Adrian Passey, was exceptionally high.
To confirm the result, Adrian Passey, the winner, joined on the World Championships team by Dion McNeely, Paul Taylor, Chris Robeson, Andrew Bristow and Sam Carey. The remaining 3 places on the 9-strong British team to be determined by the selectors, and we understand that places will go to Tim Hutchings, Eamon Martin, Richard Narurka, with Gary Staines travelling reserve.
Well, Tony Wall, that looks like it's going to be the team for Aix-les-Bains in a couple of weeks' time. But is this trial at the right time? Have they got enough time to recover?
I think Commonwealth Games has been an enormous problem for us this year, and we had to fit in the English cross-country unit championship as well, and so I think this has been a problem. But this is the date that the cross-country people chose themselves.
but 2 weeks, it's no time at all, and a lot of strength will have got out of the legs of the guys who ran here today.
Yes, this has been a real cross-country course, and I think that probably the Cross-Country Commission in future will have to look at the sort of course that they choose in order to fit in with the World Cross Country.
You describe it as a real cross-country course, but I think it's very different to the one they're going to face in the World Championships itself in France in a fortnight.
Yes, that's what I was saying, Jim. That's why I think they've got to look at these courses in future, especially for the trial, and make sure that they are tied up with the course that they're going to run at the World Cross Country.
Would you still defend the selection policy then of picking the first 6 as opposed to, say, the first 5?
Yes, I would defend that because that was done last December, and the athletes have known since last December exactly what they have to do to get into the team. What I don't defend, unfortunately, is the tendency this week to try and change that policy. You can't change the policy at the last minute, and that's why the board has been strong about sticking to the policy that they first had last January.
Just finally, I believe we were second behind the Kenyans overall last time out. It's expecting a lot to do that again.
I think it is this year, because it is quite an extraordinary year for us. Next year, I think the team will be much stronger.
Good. Tony Ward, thank you very much indeed. Well, that just about wraps it up. Certainly the windiest place I've ever tried to string a couple of sentences together from. Next Sunday, I'm glad to say, we go back indoors for the Kodak Classic, the climax of the indoor season, Great Britain against the Soviet Union and the USA, with Colin Jackson going for a world record over the hurdles. I'm getting blown over here. That's it from Glasgow. Bye-bye.